Just like that, I'm back. Welcome back, everybody. Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 34. 34. Episode 34 in the books. At least about to be. Thanks for everybody's patience. I'm back. I'm in the suburbs now. I moved out of the city and I miss it. I miss it, y'all. A lot of pros and cons. You see, people who... You can always tell who grew up in the city and who didn't. You can also tell who is a drama queen and who's not. People who have not grown up in the city, but frequent the city for whatever reason, whether it be work or school, friend's house, social events, recreational things, you'll find that people who, in my opinion, are a bit detached from reality will talk so poorly about the city. Like in such a crazy way to me personally. And just like that, I'm gonna dive right into it, y'all. I'm not even gonna lollygag or pussyfoot around this one, but I've noticed that especially when interacting with people at work, if they live in the suburbs, if that's all they knew, grew up in the suburbs, went to suburbia, school districts, and et cetera, et cetera. Not to say that they didn't have their own types of struggles or, advantages, disadvantages, what have you. But it's a different world. It's a different world entirely. And for whatever reason, they feel like the city is bad. Like the city is this horrible, horrible place. And I think there are always pros and cons. And I'm more receptive to listen to the factual pros and cons. Like, for example, the city of Philadelphia wage tax. The city of Philadelphia's wage tax is, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, 4%. So 4% of your total income goes to the Philadelphia wage tax. In the suburb that I live in, it's 2%. May even be 1. I gotta double check. It's 1 or 2%. So if you come to me and tell me, hey, I'm building a better budget, I tried to save money, I got more space for cheaper than what I would have paid for in Philly for the same space, and I'm paying less money for the wage tax or property taxes, or give me some tangible evidence, then I'm more receptive to that. I'm much more likely to hear you out, listen to you, entertain whatever, points that you're making, because that's factual stuff. And even if it's a situation where it's like, hey, I pay more money out here, but I have more accessibility to X. So I have accessibility to more, like I drive for Uber and I hate driving in the city, and I found out I spent more gas and tolls driving into the city for Uber, and now I'm driving back out to go home, yada, yada, yada. Then, okay, that's more like a subjective thing, because it might be a situation where somebody who drives for Uber and they live in the city prefers that because, they live in the city. That's like a subjective thing. But for all of those people out there specifically who just think Philadelphia is hell on earth, and some of it isn't their fault. A lot of it is the media. I mean, it's very rare you're watching. When's the last time you watched a news story and there was no story about violent crime, burglary, murder? This sucks. This person is suspected of doing X or Y or Z. When's the last time? And that isn't their fault. Now, where I will hold them accountable is you need to be aware of the fact that the news is the media is only going to pump whatever they want you to see, and violence sells, sex sells, mischief sells. So of course you're going to hear about these stories, because hearing about how that firefighter got that cat out of the tree just isn't a story that sells. You're changing the channel quickly to watch some silly reality show or some crazy gimmicky show like The Masked Singer or something. Shout out to The Masked Singer. Crazy gimmick show. I'm actually really just jealous that I didn't think of that idea. Curiosity kills, and you're curious about who's behind that mask and whose voice that is. So, shout out to the Masked Singer. I'm really how did Nick Cannon get to hosting that, y'all? You ever think about stuff like that? Like when you see somebody like, Ryan Seacrest or what's that guy's name who used to host that TRL on MTV? What the hell was his name? Y'all know who I'm talking about though. But they're like perpetual hosts. Or even if it was something like Michael Strahan or something. It's like, okay, these are like perpetual hosts. Like no big deal. Drew Carey. Whatever. But when you see somebody like Nick Cannon, like, yeah, you can make the argument and he hosts Wild 'N Out, but he is also a participant. So it's like tough to really kind of narrow that down. Here I am on a tangent. Point being. There's people out there who tune into the news. They only tune into the news and they hear all these bad, negative stories and they never lived in the city. So their perspective, their opinion, their viewpoint is only what the media has like pumped out. But then you have other people who, and I guess this type of person is the person I mainly have to gripe with, that like because they live in the suburbs, like they're in heaven, they're in this untouchable, euphoric utopia where nothing goes wrong and all of the bad things are isolated to the city. And I hear it at work. I see it at the local bars I go to. I hear it in conversation on public transportation in the suburbs. People have this misguided, skewed perspective of what it's like living in urban environments, specifically dense urban environments. And I'm just going to speak specifically for the city of Philadelphia here, because that's the only thing I can really speak to. I can kind of speak to Jersey a little bit too, but you'll see people all the time just rag on Philly. Is Philly great all the time? No. But Philly, in my opinion, and yeah, I am a little biased, disclaimer, I'm from Philly, is one of the best places on the planet, period. It's culturally diverse from, food to art to music, museums, shows, concerts, philanthropy, schooling. Philly is a college town, in my opinion. You got so many schools. You even got Ivy League schools in or around the city of brotherly love. I remember being on the bus one time and hearing this young lady say, oh, I don't, all of Philadelphia is just like North Philly, essentially. I'm paraphrasing here, but she was basically saying that, like, all those stories you hear about those, like, the rough areas, like the Frankfurt or Germantown, North Philly, that those are the worst places in the city. Not even realizing that she's speaking from a place of ignorance, because North Philly isn't even like North Philly anymore. With Temple coming up and buying everything. I remember a few years back, going over a coworker's house who lived on Temple's campus because his boyfriend went to Temple. And I went over a coworker's house and we were just nerding out. I think we were playing like Magic the Gathering or something like that. Shout out to all my people who still play Magic the Gathering. Definitely, I like to say one of the more mature trading card games. But I went over there just to nerd out. And like went into his place, this newly redesigned, renovated student living like apartment that Temple has on their campus. And I was there for a good bit. We were there hanging out for a good bit, like 3-4 hours maybe. Totally forgot I was in North Philly. Until I got back to like Girard Avenue to catch the train. And I'm like, wow, I was just in North Philly for 5 hours. Doesn't feel like it. Another one of you guys know Charles. I talk about Charles a lot. My buddy Chuck. I'm the only one that calls him that, by the way. Everybody else calls him Charles. Only one calls him, but no one calls him Charlie. Don't call him Charlie. But went over to my buddy Chuck's house, and he's like the only person that lives on his block. It's like one of those really weird side streets. And same deal, being in his, now he lives in the hood. He'll tell you that. But like being in his place, you forget about that. Well, at least you try to forget about it. He'll oftentimes remind you. You'll open up the fridge and you'll see some Kool-Aid in it. And that Kool-Aid got like 4 or 5 cups of diabetes in it. Diabetes. So he'll definitely remind you that you're still in the hood. But no, all jokes aside, you forget. Hanging out at Chuck's place, you forget. And then I remember one time we needed I was going to go get some beer. And I'm like, hey, where's the closest place I can get some beer at around here? He was like, there's a deli on the corner. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. There is a deli right there on the corner. So I go in the deli and like, there's guys just hanging out in the deli. This deli is selling, like literally selling shots of alcohol. Like you could tell they don't have a liquor license. They're like literally selling shots of alcohol. We all know places like that. And like in that moment, when I went up to the, the person behind the counter, bulletproof glass counter, by the way. Reminder number 1. No, I'm sorry, that's reminder number 2. Reminder number 1 is the guys and girls just lounging in there like it's like an arcade or something. That was strike 1. Strike 2 were the cash on the bulletproof glass. That was strike 2. Right? Strikes 3 and 4 went up to the counter, cash only. Cash only. And I literally looked at the ATM and was like, no, I'm not going to the ATM in this joint. Oh, let me mute the computer. Sorry, getting notifications, y'all. That was just a Groupon email. Ignore that. And I'm going to leave that in too. I'm not going to edit that out. Because I want everybody who gets freaking 15 Groupon emails a day to feel my pain. I'm right there with you. I'm on the same boat as you. But anyway, I left that deli. I went up the street to another place that had an ATM. Nobody was in there. Used the ATM. Then went back to the deli and got what I had to get. I want to say like Allagash. What did I get? I got some like non-hood stuff that like when I went to ask about it, the person made a face almost as if to say, don't you mean English 800? Don't you mean Hurricane? Don't you mean Still Reserve? That's the face he made. Yeah, I want to say it was something crazy. It wasn't like Heineken or Corona or anything like that. That's like a little off the mark, but like not too crazy. It was something like crazy. Because my lodge brothers got me all bougie. I forgot what it was. It was something crazy. But, yeah. Oh, you know what? It could have been Blue Moon. Point being. Person looked at me like I was strange because I wasn't ordering a 40. That's the hood. Shout out to Chuck for putting up with stuff like that every day. But that's the hood. And for all intents and purposes, and I can understand someone's perspective if you're not from there, seeing like how bad that looks. But it's really, is it great? No, but it's really not that bad. It's really not. People who aren't from the area, it looks a whole lot worse than it really is. That being said, those are specific isolated parts of Philadelphia, and I will even argue dense urban environments. There's areas like that in every dense urban environment. Hell, there are some shady parts of the suburbs you don't want to get caught walking down. Some shady people out here, man. Shady people. And there's like a shady person universal uniform. It's the dingy, oversized white tee, ripped jeans, and that like musty smell. Like the person smells like the water bill's past due. Like that's how they smell. People like that in the suburbs too. But point being, it's just really, really, and I apologize, y'all. I'm gonna listen back to this when I'm editing it, and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that's how I got on this topic. But this is something I've been like really, really passionate about. And the best and worst part about having friends, family, and coworkers listen to your podcast, the best and worst part is everybody knows who you're talking about in some cases. So there's sometimes I really want to be specific. I was like, oh, I want to be petty so bad. Talk about this person. You know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. There's a small community, like outside of the people who listen in different states, people I'd never met before, people who just came across this just browsing or maybe heard about it from a friend. Generally speaking, the small communities of people who listen to this show are from a specific area in my life. They're either coworkers or former coworkers. They are friends, acquaintances, friends of friends. They're lodge brothers and few family members. And obviously, you know, people I went to high school with, etc., etc. So, although friend A may not know coworker B, coworker C knows coworker B. So when that's so hard, y'all. You know, I never really came flat out and said this to y'all, but I do view y'all. I never came out and said what I'm about to say to y'all, but I do view y'all as extended family. So I'm gonna just go ahead and trust all of y'all and kind of just open up and say what I gotta say. But sometimes I genuinely do hesitate. I was watching Colin Cowherd. If you're into sports, if you watch FS1. He hosts a show called The Herd, and he talks about sports, and I only watch him during football season because it's the only really sport that I really, really care about. So it's the only sport that I can watch talk shows and listen to podcasts about. Like I couldn't watch ESPN for hockey, baseball, soccer, basketball, boxing. I couldn't watch ESPN for those sports, but I could watch ESPN for football. And I was watching the clip from him the other day, and I love this guy. I really do. And he said the advice he gives to young and up and coming journalists, young and upcoming TV personalities, people in radio, whatever. And I take that stuff to heart. If anybody knows me and knows how passionate I am about this, how much I care about this, any advice that I get, not only just about podcasting or broadcasting in general, being a personality in general, anytime I get advice about something that I'm passionate about, that I care about, I'm going to take it to heart. And anyone who knows me knows I'm like that. And Colin Cowherd says the advice that he gives to young people is don't be afraid to have an opinion, and don't be afraid to be controversial. And sometimes I fall into this trap where there are certain topics that like I don't want to talk about because even though I may not be talking about anybody in particular, more often than not, the shoe fits. It does. And then you kind of get in this really awkward place where a part of you, this is me being honest with y'all family, I'm being honest. A part of you wants to be petty. And you're like, hey, I want to talk about this topic because I want to say this thing to this person. And I can't say it, so I'm going to say it here because I know they're going to hear it. And it's easier for me to confront the topic after they listen versus bringing it up. There are times I want to be that way, but I think I shy away from that because that's not what I want to use this platform for. But there are other times wholeheartedly that I have an opinion about a topic that I definitely want to talk about. I want to reveal to you all. I want to express to you all. But I know it's going to hit that person that may or may not be a close friend of mine. And it's like, hits that 1, 2, 5, 10 people, and now I'll potentially lose some audience members because of my opinion. But then when hearing that from Colin really, really resonated within me, because it's one of those things like the reason you all are listening to the show for the most part anyway, allow me to make a safe assumption, an educated guess, is because you want to hear my opinion, right? You want to hear my opinion. You want to hear what I have to say. And I'm going to have that opinion whether I share it on the show or not. And if you guys and girls are genuinely my extended family, if I am really comfortable with my audience and I really have built a connection, I shouldn't be afraid to say something at the risk of being judged. Because that's how dialogue happens, right? If someone is has really strong convictions about their belief system, about what they know, about what they feel, about what they want, or they think they know, they think they feel, they think they want, and they want to just have a better understanding, they're not going to shy away from that dialogue, right? The people who shut you out, who exile you and excommunicate themselves because they disagree with your thought process, I guess that's not really the type of person that I'm going to care about if they stop listening, right? Me being honest with y'all. So I struggle with that often. I do. Especially when, it's one thing about friends and family, because you don't see them all the time, and it's like at the end of the day, y'all still friends, y'all still family. But coworkers can be really, really, really tricky. You don't want to find yourself in a sticky situation at work where now your livelihood, your source of income is affected because of a hobby. And I will say this, I'd be much more loose with my tongue if I did not have to rely on where I worked at. But I'm getting better. I'm finding new ways to come up with topics of conversation that I feel like will start dialogue. I was talking to somebody at work last week, I want to say, 2 weeks ago. And I was talking to this person about a situation that I felt like I've never been in before, and I was trying to actually it was two people. I was trying to get their advice on something. So I genuinely believe that somebody I know, so they make subtle racist comments, but the thing is, I think they genuinely don't know that they're racist. They're being racist or discriminatory. And I know some of you will disagree with me on this, but I hope the majority of you at least understand where I'm coming from. I do think that people can be racist and or discriminatory and not be aware of it. And I personally feel, especially as a person of color, that it's my responsibility to help to educate people who are unwillingly ignorant. Because you have willful ignorance. Hey, I know I don't know the full picture. And I know where to go to get the full picture, but I'm okay with not knowing the full picture. I'm not going to seek out knowledge. That's willful ignorance. People who are unwillingly ignorant are people who do say, discriminatory or racially charged comments, but in their mind they're just having a conversation. And I feel like that can apply to any and everything, as crazy as it sounds. And I think a lot of the times people feel like you're not quote unquote down for the cause because you do want to give a listening ear to someone on the other side of the fence. I think oftentimes, especially when it comes to differences of opinions, we always feel or believe that the person is on the other side of the fence by choice. And that's not always the case. They could have just been put there unknowingly, unwillingly. So this person that I know says racially charged or discriminatory comments. And I personally feel that this person is unaware. Now you may be thinking like, hey Tim, how do you know this person doesn't really mean it? Well, I've been around this person long enough to know when this person is intentionally being away, whether it be happy, angry, sad, dramatic, whatever, and unintentionally being that way. And there's so much more to communication other than just verbal cues. You have nonverbal cues as well. Body language, facial expressions, the subtle tilt of the head. You know what I'm talking about. How you know that guy or girl likes you even though you two never said anything to each other. How you know not to get in that person's line because they're just having a bad day and they're not going to take that coupon that you have. When not to go into your boss's office because something's just off. He or she is in a bad mood. And I'm talking to these two co-worker turned friends. One of you kind of like a little brother. The other one, we've gotten close over the months. And talking to these two, trying to get an opinion on what I should do. Because I feel like, hey, look, I'm responsible. If this person, specifically as a person of color and also someone who's aware of the comment, it's one thing if you're like not aware of it, then like, how can you? I feel like I'm responsible to tell this person like, hey. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel evidence suggests, based on previous conversations with this person, that this person isn't going to be receptive to the conversation. And I feel like this person will get very defensive. Very, very defensive. And I'm so torn because a part of me is like, this person is just very strongly opinionated and very stuck in their ways. So this person is not going to be open to, so why should I care? I'll let this person be. But another part of me is like, hey, if I said something that like upset somebody unknowingly, I would want that person to tell me. Like, hey, the other day when you said you don't feel comfortable walking in this part of the city because of who lives there, I know in your mind you were probably just saying it from a safety perspective, but this is the type of people that live there. So on the surface, it could come off this way. I don't know if you meant it that way or not, but I just want to make you aware of what you said, the gravity of what you said. I feel responsible to do that and to say that, y'all. I do. This is my cry for help. You all know how to get in contact with me. If you're a personal friend, family member, whomever, and you have my phone number, please reach out to me, text me, call me. But if you're not ready for that type of interaction with me, or if you're on the other side of the country, the other side of the state, the other side of the city, please email me. All of my contact information is always in the description of every episode. Email me, DM me, message me. What should I do? What should I do? And let me be very, very clear. What's bothering me isn't them being that way. Because everybody's going to be however they're going to be. A quote that you either love or hate is, it is what it is. And one of the most underrated rappers of all time, Jadakiss, had a lyric that said, it is what it is, and that's how it's just going to be. Very true words. Prophetic words. Very insightful. I'm not upset at the fact that at who they are, them being them. I'm upset at, or not upset, sorry, that's the wrong word. I'm not, what's the word I want to use, y'all? I'm not conflicted because of them making a willing or unwilling choice to be that way. I'm conflicted at me having this knowledge and them potentially being ignorant and me not taking the steps to correct that ignorance. I feel like we share some of the blame, regardless whether it's a sexuality thing when it comes to, gender, or whether it's a political belief, whether it's a religious belief, whether it's, in this case, a cultural or racial standpoint or perspective. I feel that when you don't, especially when you have the opportunity to educate and alleviate someone's ignorance, you should take that opportunity, because it almost takes away from your right to be upset about something. I can't be all about the rights of certain people or the rights of a certain act or behavior, and when I see somebody ignorant to that, not say something. I feel like I'm responsible to say something. And then at that point, if that person goes, hey, no, I know what I'm doing, but in so many words, because who's going to come out and say that, right? But if someone comes off like, no, I know what I'm doing, I'm aware, then at that point, I'm okay. I won't lose any sleep at night. That's how they want to be. It's messed up, but whatever. That's them. That's their life. But if it's a situation where they're like, wow, you know what? I had no idea that's how I came off. Or you know what? I had no idea I made this person feel this way when I said this. Then I feel like how could you not jump at the opportunity for that? But please hit me up, y'all. Please hit me up. And just let me know. Just give me some advice. I would love to get some advice from you all. And take it from there. And hopefully if I get some really, really good advice, I'll talk about it on next week's episode. Another thing that really has me bummed is, and I'm still getting my thoughts together on this topic, so I'm going to be very vague, and I do apologize. I'll be more specific next week. But I feel like there are certain things, and you can take educated guesses on what I'm talking about, but I think there are certain things, especially today in the social climate that we live in, especially with social media being the way that it is, it's really tough to have an opinion on certain things. It really, really is. And when you don't share the opinion of a particular group, you're automatically labeled as a bigot or someone who's insensitive or someone who's not down for the cause. And I think people oftentimes confuse or misinterpret, I should say, confusion and a wantingness to understand with bigotry. And it makes it really, really tough for somebody who, like me with this particular topic and others out there, who want to learn about something, but they feel intimidated. They feel like, hey, I don't agree, and I'm not coming into this space to be confrontational or aggressive or abrasive or insensitive. I'm coming into this space to learn more about this and hoping that you can educate me. And even though I feel that my belief system won't change, I'm hoping that my perspective will, at least. And I can get to a point where, yeah, I still disagree, but at least I understand. You feel like you can't do that. You feel like very intimidated. And I think that's just this small area that oftentimes get overlooked. Here, speaking of being controversial, I'm going to say something that might rub a lot of people the wrong way. But I hope you can look past what I'm about to say and see my point. Okay? There are people out there who are victims of terrible, terrible crimes. Terrible, terrible crimes. But there is also a space to view the victim, not only the victim's perspective, but the criminal's perspective. Right? And let's take a guy who murdered somebody. Right? It's really easy to look at the person, the victim, and go, oh man, I feel bad for this person's family, this person's kids or wife or husband or whatever. And I think it's really, really easy to do that. And I'll even go as far as to say it's normal to do that, right? To sympathize and or empathize with that scenario, that person. But no one ever wants to look at the criminal. What about that person's family? Right? Yeah, he made a poor decision, but now his kids have to suffer for it. And it's like one of those things when you bring up something like that, and don't worry, I'm going to tie this all together. When you bring up something like that, you kind of get viewed under a negative light. You kind of get viewed with the side eye. You go, oh, you agree with the killer. Oh, you don't see anything wrong with this person being murdered. Oh, you're insensitive. Oh, you're barbaric. No, I'm just saying, why is it okay for me to sympathize for one person and not the other? And there's a small, again, a lot of you won't like what I'm about to say, but there's a small percentage of people who are on the opposing side of certain opinions that have to go through a certain reality that people don't want to acknowledge. I can't ask questions about this topic that I want to be more informed about, because if I express what my beliefs are, if I express that I disagree, I'm automatically viewed as I'm a bigot. There's no gray area. I'm a bigot. I'm against this person's rights. I'm against this type of living. I'm against this type of place. I'm against this type of behavior. And I tell people all the time, understanding does not require agreement. At all. Period. It doesn't. And I think it's so frustrating for somebody like me who, like, my favorite thing to do in the world is to learn. I feel like knowledge should not be kept to oneself. Knowledge should be shared. Knowledge, in a way, is another form of energy. You can't weigh it. You can't quantify it, but it exists. And I think we, as a people, owe it to ourselves and one another to share knowledge. So you take it someone who has that perspective, that philosophy, that life philosophy, when you want to learn and grow as much as you can learn and grow. And you feel like you can't because you feel like you'll be shut out of a dialogue just for simply having a belief system. Which, ironically, the people who are usually the victims of whatever topic, like the opposing side of it, are usually the ones that are doing this very same thing that they are accusing others of. And it's like, you don't want to understand me. You don't want to understand me. You're not willing to look inside a day in my life. And I do get that. All I'm asking is for it to be reciprocated. And I know this is very, very vague, y'all. I do. And I promise you all, once I get my thoughts together about the topic, because it's a very sensitive topic, and there's one person in particular who I know who is a loyal listener of this show, it's going to rub them the wrong way. It's a topic that they feel very, very passionate about. And if they really knew what I thought about this topic, I think they would view me differently as a person. For the very same reasons that I just said. Because I don't agree with something. And it's a shame. It really is. But next week, I'll have my thoughts together about the topic. I'll bring it up. I'll present it in such a way that hopefully it can be received well and put myself in a position where I can create an open dialogue for it. In the meantime, everybody, I am going to transition into something that I said I was going to talk about, and I know I've been away. I'm super sorry. I know I've been away, but I do want to very briefly talk about Otakon, the convention that I went to. And I know it's over 2 months old at this point, but I do want to say one thing that never ceases to amaze me about Otakon is how together that culture is. it's such an embracing culture and positive culture, the otaku culture. Now, just like with any culture, you do have a bit of toxicity where you'll have the know-it-alls, the person, like, if you don't know this much about this anime, about this music composer, about this video game, about this artist, then you're not a real fan. And if you can't relate to the whole anime perspective, how many of us know a person who's been listening to an artist before they went mainstream, or been watching a show before it got popular, been going to a certain place before everybody knew about it, and they sit here and say, because you weren't going back when I was going, you're not as dedicated, you're not a real fan. Just like every culture, unfortunately, the otaku anime culture has that as well. They do. I remember, I'm probably gonna alienate some of my audience here, but I don't care. It's what I like. I really love anime. I love being a nerd. So anime and video games are oftentimes correlated. And usually you'll get a situation where you'll have a music composer or an artist who maybe did a game or a movie or an anime transition into the other environment. For example, you might have somebody who was the lead producer on an anime and now is the lead game designer on the video game. You're familiar with this person's work, so you want to investigate this new project because you're intrigued about it. Anime and video games are oftentimes like that, especially if you like a certain art style or a certain music style. And there's a certain video game franchise that is, I want to say, almost as old as I am, called The Tales of. And then whatever the iteration is, it'll have the title. So, for example, the very first game was called Tales of Fantasia. And then there's another iteration called Tales of Destiny. I'm currently playing a version called Tales of Exilia. So I hope you get the theme here. It's Tales of. And I remember my very first Otakon back in 2015, they were having a Tales of panel. And I thought I was a huge Tales fan. I had at least heard of and or played a lot of the Tales games. Never finished any of them. I'll get to that in a bit. But was a huge fan of the Tales of franchise. And I remember seeing the Tales of panel. I'm like, oh, I gotta see this. And I remember waiting in line, and I was standing next to this person, and this person goes, it was this woman, and she's like, oh, yay, I'm really excited for this panel. I missed it last year, yada, yada, yada. And me and her, we kind of hit it off. We're talking. It's like a really good time. And she's like, oh, so how many of the Tales games you've played? And I'm like, oh, I like to think I played a fair amount, blah, 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 blah. And she very condescendingly goes, there's 15 of them, and you only played 7. Yeah, there's people out there in the otaku culture that's like, if they're very toxic. She even went as far as to say I shouldn't even be in the panel. I shouldn't even be in line to see the panel. And I know we all know people like that. I know one of my buddies is like a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. And he's been listening to Kendrick since he was K-Dot. And he's always been very, very excited and passionate about people who gets introduced or reintroduced or dives deeper into Kendrick Lamar. And he loves it. And I like people like that. Like, hey, I enjoy this person, place, or thing. Or if you're from Philly, I'll go ahead and just say John. I appreciate this John way more than anyone that I know. And I'm so excited to see you involved in this now. Then you got the other group of people that's like, hey, no, you weren't here. You weren't with me shooting in the gym. You can't appreciate this thing. And that was another point of contention even for this girl, because I haven't finished. I played 7 Tales of games, but never finished any of them. I wasn't worthy. But aside from people like that, Otakon is an amazing, amazing place. And I always find it in the sense of like as far as sexuality is concerned, people are much more accepting of people's sexuality and how they identify within the otaku culture than people are just in normal society, and it is freaking crazy to me. I also see like a strong correlation of people who aren't religious are also otakus and are really really deep into the otaku culture, and I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But generally speaking, like regardless of who you are, what you are, Otakon, I see guys cosplaying as female characters. I see girls cosplaying as male characters. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Metroid, but there's a old school Nintendo game. I think it debuted in like 1985 called Metroid. And Metroid stars a female bounty hunter called Samus Aran. And she's like a super, like this strong, powerful female character, main protagonist. And from what I can see, like a lot of young ladies and a lot of women in general look up to her and admire her for what she represents just for women. And I think that's super dope. To be like a bounty hunter in space, like and to be a strong female lead like that, I think is dope, because you usually only see those macho roles for, you know, male characters or male portrayals of those. And I think it's really cool that you can take someone and something, because now it's not all about who Samus is, it's about what she is. Yes, she's Samus, that's the who, but what, she's also a woman. So to take that femininity and that power and that resolve and just combine it into this strong female character, I think it's super dope. But there were several guys cosplaying as Samus. And I thought that was so cool, because you look beyond gender and you go, what did this person mean to me? And I think it's so dope, so cool, and so eye-opening to see someone from the opposite sex motivate and be a role model, real or otherwise, for somebody. I think that's so dope. For Samus and what she represents, who she represents, and for me to talk to this guy and have him tear up to talk about Samus and who she was and what she means to him. And for him to be brave enough to cosplay as her, I think that's so dope. And that's stuff that I usually only ever see at Otakon. And I just wanted to share that experience with you. Other than that, it's pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. Met some new people, strengthened some old friendships, reinforced some old friendships, and had a great time as normal. But I really, really wanted to bring that to the forefront and let y'all know that I really wish I saw more of that in just like everyday life. I really did. Because seeing that really put a huge smile on my face. Last thing I'll bring up before I get going. It is pretty late here on a Sunday night. I wasn't going to record. I really was going to push this back, y'all. But it's 11:56 right now where I am on Sunday night. So I'm going to say this and then wrap up. So I moved in recently with my girlfriend, and it has been a huge transition. There are a lot of ways that have been like great, and there's some challenges that I've had to overcome and some that I am still dealing with. But one thing that I will say is my philosophy. There are a lot of people out there, and everybody's life situation is different. And this is going to be one of those things that I say is going to apply to some people. Hey, if the shoe fits, wear it. But this is just a general statement. There are a lot of things that you feel like you believe, or things you feel like you're certain on, and your resolve has been tested, and you're like, no, this is what my thought process is. This is my life philosophy. And until you get something that challenges those philosophical standpoints, I feel like you can never really truly know until you get hit with adversity, or at least something that challenges your thought process. I had it reaffirmed that my personal belief that before you make the next step with somebody, as far as marriage is concerned, I feel like you gotta live with that person. Now, you can't put a timestamp or time frame on people's life. You can't put a schedule on people's life. Everybody's life is different. There are some people who have kids earlier than expected. There are some people whose job takes them to places. There are some people who are in the military and they kind of just get married just for the perks and benefits. There are some people who feel like, hey, I'm almost age X and there's nothing after this, so if I don't pull the trigger now, I will now. It's not going to happen. If I don't pull the trigger now, it's not going to happen. So I understand everybody has a different lifestyle and a different thought process, but I am very, very adamant in the thought that you need to live with the person before you pull that trigger. You really, really do. And I would even go as far as to argue is that you don't really even know yourself, and to expect someone to marry you or to have kids with you, start a family with you, move in with you, change their entire lifestyle for you, and you don't even know yourself, how can you be the best you for that person? And you learn a lot about yourself when it comes to living with somebody. Things that you're like, damn, I really do that? I need to get better. I need to change. And things you go, wow, I never knew this about myself. I think that's cool. I need to reinforce this positive behavior. And I'm learning. And I can't wait to really dive into a lot of the different things that I've experienced, both for better and for worse. And it'll be 2 months, October 5th. And living with somebody else, there's layers here. Living with somebody else, living with someone of the opposite sex, and living with someone that you are romantically involved in, or involved with, I should say, is bonkers. It's glorious, it's crazy, it's annoying, it's irritating, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's like so many different things. And I think that's a journey that everybody should go through. Make the time. And if you're going to be scared, I was scared. Hell, I'm still scared now. I was scared to pull the trigger. So I kind of relied on other things like, oh, this is a smart financial decision, or hey, I really like this person. But deep down, I was scared. I was really, really scared, just nervous. And if you all recall a couple of episodes ago, I even had to get advice on what to do and how to do it. Because that's such a huge move. And I think anyone who dismisses it as though it's not really needs to take a step back and reevaluate that thought. It's been a great thing and it's been a challenging thing, and the competitor in me and the intellectual in me is very, very curious to see where this goes. And I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm hopeful. But I'm also excited. But I'm gonna let you all go. I'll talk your ear off. But this has been refreshing for me. I'm really glad I sat down and did this. I oftentimes forget how much fun I have doing this, and I'm really glad I got back behind the mic. It's been tough, y'all. There have been times, I'm gonna be real with y'all. There have been times I've been like, oh man, I'll do this later. But legitimately, I have been busy. Moving is crazy. It's not just the physical part of moving isn't just the time consuming part. It's trying to develop a new routine. You also got to consider you're in someone else's life now, and they're in yours. So it's okay, I can't record at this time now, or I got to do this, or I got to make time for that, or I normally do this at this time and I can't. And there's just so much that goes into it. So hopefully this is the start of a new routine, a normal routine, and I can help normalize this thing and finally get back to a normal schedule. I thank y'all so much for being so patient with me. But it's like my buddy Marshall told me, this is a hobby. Don't let it stress you out, and don't let other areas of your life get, diminished, or don't let other areas of your life suffer. because of this. And that was great advice that I had to take to heart. In the meantime, everybody, thanks for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. And as always, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.